in the group.
Oh, sure. Thanks, Jim. So, Andy, if it's okay, can I reserve that maybe until next month? Fingers crossed that we'll be back together in person.
I think that's okay. I think that all that information keeps for another month.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything else? Maybe on the legislative end? I see lots of talk, but I don't really know of anything that's actually happened yet.
No, Andy, the only thing I saw today was that the assembly was convening same way we are in virtual session today. So they were going at it for the first time. So I don't know if they got anything accomplished, but it sounded like they were having the same struggles we are as everybody being together in one place at one time and doing it remotely.
Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to item B, the COVID update.
Okay, we have this, as you know, as a standing agenda item for the duration of the pandemic. And we'll go ahead and start with Jake. Anything you'd like to share regarding buildings and grounds?
Yep. So we basically have all of my staff still on. There's a few that for various reasons have elected to use time off versus working right now. But we're going ahead with high detail cleaning similar to a summer routine. We're pretty much through. We did a quick initial sanitize of the entire buildings the first week, and then we went in and did a full detail wipe down with the second step of sanitization, and we're documenting that as we go. And we're keeping those areas that, when we get a classroom done, we mark it down and move on to the next areas, and we're working through all the buildings that way, and we're pretty well done with the fine detail cleaning, and we're starting to move into waxing floors, deep cleaning the carpets, starting to do some light remodeling, painting type projects, and we're really hoping that the governor will give us some directive as to no students coming back is my assumption, but once we hear that, we can really start going and making some progress on our other summer projects. So pretty basic, I guess. Any questions?
No.
If students do come back for a month, like the waxing and deep cleaning of the carpets you're doing now, will you do that again in the summer?
It most likely will not need to happen unless there's a certain room that gets overabundance of use or something along those lines, and we're trying to stage that to do the rooms that may encounter that type of traffic till the end. Well, but we're still wanting to push forward on the other room, so I don't see that having to be a problem. We commonly may have some summer school activities, things like that, on our freshly waxed floors during the summer before kids come back for the regular school year anyways. So they touch them up and maybe give them one more top coat of wax, and they'll be good to go.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that is on my mind though, and trying to keep everything staged right, is whether, there's a lot of possibilities out there, but I'm trying to keep my options open if we do come back towards the end of the regular school year, or if for some reason they may start school a little early. We're trying to be as proactive as we can for options like that, so that we're ready and able to take kids back whenever they say so.
Jake, are we prepared if the kids do come back with the sanitizing and everything? What is your plan for that in case the kids do come back for a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks before the school ends?
Yeah.
Something.
So like I said, we've documented everybody that's been in the building and in each individual room. So if they were to be test positive for COVID-19, we would be able to know what rooms they were exposed to or what areas. And once we finish those, we're keeping them locked. So we also have just the number of days that they may be empty to help with the virus kill time. So I feel confident that barring anything extraordinary, we should be ready at a very short notice if we do need to bring kids back.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, next we wanted to touch briefly on food service. The food pickup continues to go well twice a day, Monday through Friday. And we have support staff helping our food service staff. Just want to give a huge kudos to Lisa Benishek and crew for making that happen. And then very exciting, we started food delivery today. It was scheduled for yesterday, but we canceled due to the weather. So with our Maliet partners today and also a support staff member on every Maliet vehicle, I understand we delivered over 300 meals today.
Wow.
And we look for that to, I think once it catches on and families call in and recognize the convenience, will gain even more momentum.
Yeah, I did see one of the buses out and about this morning delivering the lunches. So from my vantage point on the second floor, it wasn't bad. They were doing a good job.
Good. And I would like to thank Tim Prunty and Aaron Wick too for being the district liaisons to Maliet, and Jake I know was instrumental in getting coolers equipped on the buses, etc. So we just a lot of hands helped that process, and we pulled it off today. So we're proud of that.
Julie,
Moving on. Yes.
Was there a lot
Go
of
ahead.
people picking up food at the high school?
Yes, we still have a lot. I want to say our average is about 600 meals between the two pickup times.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's impressive.
Yes. So we would also like to thank our internet access providers. As you know, Serenity made it happen in a lot of our rural areas, and most recently, tech ed teacher Dave Coor put a hot spot in the parking lot of Coors Country Store in Phlox. So Phlox now has Wi-Fi as well. So we're pretty happy with that. We know it isn't perfect, but it certainly is a lot better than it was when we started with home instructional opportunity. Go ahead.
I just want to thank the support that our principals and staff is showing everybody. The parents are just so happy with the way it's all going.
Keeping the kids busy and engaged.
Yes, exactly.
We appreciate that. We wanted to thank the Antigo Public Library also. You know, we had a book giveaway courtesy of the Antigo Public Library, and we're still looking for other opportunities to do that with the food distribution. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Amy Doms, who will give you an update on instructional opportunities that were posted on our website yesterday.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. It's kind of unique. I can see all of your faces. I have an extension where I can see everybody at the same time. So it's like Brady Bunch on steroids. So that's cool.
Hey, don't give Mike any ideas.
Thankful.
So as principals and building leaders, we've been meeting with our teachers pretty regularly still to talk about instruction and how we can provide opportunities for our students, even though not all have internet access or the capability to even maybe do a lot of work at home, because maybe parents are still working and their kids might be caring for their other kids or babysitting. So grade level teams have worked really hard to put together learning opportunity documents by grade level at grades 4K through 8, and then at the high school they've departmentalized to provide not only online opportunities with passwords and different websites to visit, but also some low tech or no tech options that families can do at home that would require no technology. So we just released those documents on our website yesterday. The teachers had about a week or 2 weeks to work on that. And then what we're looking to do now is also see how we can get some materials to families who don't have internet access. So printing some of those related materials and either providing copies in an area that's common, such as the food pickup, or maybe with the food delivery offerings now, some packets for students to pick up of those materials that teachers have collected and put together. And also, I lost my train of thought, but make sure that they are able to pick it up or have some areas where they could pick up or drop off for them, or even mail. That's what I was going to say. Send in the mail if they're not accessing any of those resources. So with that, teachers are wanting to be able to provide some feedback to their students who may have completed work that was sent home. So things that were on like worksheets, or maybe some reflections on books they've read. So the drop off of materials, I know has been a hot conversation for our teaching staff. We haven't identified exactly how we want that to look yet, just because then you're not dispersing, but you're bringing all of the germs in together to maybe one location if there are germs to be brought. So we just want to be really thoughtful of how we collect some of those materials and bring them back if we choose to. So we're kind of talking through and looking at that too, because teachers want to be able to provide feedback to the students on those things they've done, but they also know that they want to be cautious about that too, and just think through all of the health considerations for that as well. So we've had some good feedback from our families and teachers already with the resources being shared just as of yesterday, and also some questions too that we just need to talk through and make sure that we're clear with parents and students on how much work to be doing every day and what those documents really mean and how they should be using them at home. So does anyone have any questions regarding any of that, or?
Well, just thanks for doing it.
Yeah,
Right.
appreciate the hard work.
Can I just toss in that special education has been continuing to provide the supports that we can. We've had a lot of different meetings and documentation from DPI and OSEP, which is the Federal Office of Special Education, because this is very unprecedented times. And I just have to say, the special education staff, all of them, speech and language, OT, PTs, case managers have been diving in, contacting their kids and trying to do services the best that they can, and working with the regular ed teachers. So I'm really proud of them as well. And so they're part of this process and plan as well. So just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. And now we'll
I
turn
had
it
a
over.
quick question. Do we have any idea of the number of students that have no access? I know that we have some amenities that we're trying to make available, but do we know how many students we know have absolutely no access to internet, whether it's through transportation issues or anything?
So it just, all of our teachers have had, and this is across the district, so whether you're a grade level teacher, you're contacting your homeroom, or different groups of students that you're contacting, we've kind of asked that question through surveys or also informally as principals, like about what percentage of students are you able to get a hold of, or who haven't you heard back from? I would say roughly about a third of our students have no internet, or it's irregular enough where we're not able to have back and forth communication. So I know the high school asked a specific question about like no technology or like not accessible for materials. We've been more contacting just like based off of your contacts with your students or groups, who haven't you been able to get a hold of? And roughly, I would say the numbers are about a third. And the elementary was asking similar questions and also gathering in a more formal survey as well, some of those numbers. I would say that numbers quite consistent though, even for our staff, because our staff, just because of where they live, some people have spotty internet and have to call into our meetings or access our meetings differently and can't do some of the online things too. So they're using some of the hot spots that we provide in the community too, and driving to those parking lots in different locations too, to be able to check their email and things.
Thank you very much.
At
And
this time,
counseling staff too, sorry. Counseling staff has also put a lot of materials out there to help support the mental health of our students. And so that is also part of that update on the website that you've seen.
and mental
Sorry.
health of our staff.
Yes. Yep.
So at this time, we'll turn it over to Clint Rogers, who will give you a brief update on graduation credits and grading discussions.
All right, as far as graduation credits are concerned, we're still investigating that topic, but we do anticipate coming to you on the 28th with a recommendation based on what some other districts are doing and what DPI is recommending. I do expect that recommendation to be less than what our current credit requirement is, but I'm not sure how that's all going to shake out yet. We still have some investigating and discussions to do. As far as grading goes, I want to ground this grading conversation in a quote that Anita had read out of, I don't know what she was reading, but it just really resonated with me with grading. And it says, if teachers are assigning grades right now, what they are grading is privilege. Without the equalization force of the school building and its services, limited as they are, teachers are grading on access to technology, Wi-Fi, food, housing, security, ableism. And that's by Sim Kern.
Wow.
So I just wanted to ground us in that, because when Anita read that, that really resonated with me as we are having grading conversations throughout the district. So right now, I also had a meeting with the guiding coalition of the high school, the school leadership team, and we had tweaked with a proposal for grading, and I'll just read it to you here. So students' grades for this semester will not be counted towards their cumulative GPA. Their grade will be a pass or in progress until school is back in session. If students are passing as of March 16th, which was our last day of class, they will receive a pass. If a student was failing as of March 16th, they can improve their grade to passing. So right now, their grade would be an incomplete, and then it would turn into a fail at the end of the semester if we don't return and they don't improve that grade to a passing grade. Also, seniors will have to have, in order to participate in the graduation ceremony, they'll have to have all of their required classes passing by May 28th at 3 o'clock, which is the deadline to participate in the graduation ceremony, whatever that looks like right now. So that's kind of where we were at with grading and graduation. Any questions?
Is there any thought on a graduation ceremony, or just see things progress?
I only heard little pieces of that, Andy. But
The question was about
ceremony.
the graduation ceremony.
Right now, the graduation ceremony is on as planned, but we are discussing some alternatives in case that's not a possibility. But right now, it's on as planned unless we receive a directive otherwise.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Clint. That concludes our pandemic update, unless the board has additional questions.
I wanted to ask Noel, what he thought about the, I'm not sure that, I don't think that there's a possibility that we'll be back in session this school year because of the fact that there is not widely available testing yet. So I was wondering if Noel could speak to that as far as the
Sure.
progress on that.
Well, couple things. I know that the testing as of now, many health organizations have built their own kits, but again, they're very limited, and you're absolutely right on that. The second question to that is, the basic reason that we are in this shut-in mode is primarily to flatten the curve, and so far the numbers are looking a lot better than what we had anticipated, so that is very encouraging. It's a possibility that they may probably suggest that school may be delayed for another week or two. It's a possibility that if the current trend continues, you may be seeing the classes probably resuming at some point before the graduation time. But I don't foresee any large scale production of testing at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Julie, do you think we'll have any summer school?
Right now, we are planning as though we will have summer school, Jeannie. I know Tom Zamzo started the planning early for our district. It is such a waiting game, as you know. And when someone mentioned earlier about a possibility of starting our school year earlier, let's say in August, that would have to be a legislation change. And so that's not even something locally that we can plan on until we know what the governor and others will suggest.
Okay.
So I have a question. If the governor would say that school will go back into session before the end of the school year, do parents have any options if they're like, I don't want to send my kids to school because there's no testing yet and I don't feel it's safe to do that yet?
Yes, the answer would be they would have that right to keep their children home. What we did during those couple of days before we were forced to close, as you recall, we closed 2 days earlier than the forced closure. And what we told parents at that time is you can excuse your children based on, a safety concern, and we would do the same.
Okay. Any other questions? Then I think review. It's you, Tim.
Am I on, Julie? I didn't hear what Andy said.
Yeah, budget review.
Okay, so before we get into some of the documents, I wanted to, and it might be a little premature, but I would expect that we're going to be putting some money into fund balance this year. And I've talked a little bit in the past about the salary budget and how I had, there's about 200,000 of unallocated funds in the salary budget. Last Friday was the last day for purchasing for materials and supplies in the current budget. So I'm putting those numbers together, and there were some, we haven't realized all the purchasings that's been required. So we're going to have some savings there. We're likely to see some utility savings because the buildings are open a lot less. We're going to have a discussion about transportation, but there's all sorts of transportation with field trips. If those don't occur, there may be some savings there. So I'm anticipating that depending on when children get back, we could see anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 that we would be putting into fund balance. And that would be just the general fund. We're paying most of our staff, and that's where our biggest expenses are. We're honoring our contracts with our CSAs and our other professional development partners. So in an overall sense, the last 3 months of school won't necessarily be, we aren't at a point where we are actually making an attempt to, I don't know how to quite word it, but to save the maximum amount. We're being prudent with paying folks. And we're in the people business, so that's our biggest expense, but we will receive some. So the first document I'd like you to look at, if you haven't reviewed it, is the Aquatic Center. So the Aquatic Center operates on its own budget, but we closed the Aquatic Center per a recommendation from our medical advisor, Dr. Patrick McKenna.
Yeah.
And when we do, we ended all revenues there. So when the district uses the facility, we charge the district rent on an hourly basis. There's no more revenue there. When the hospital rents it for physical therapy, we get revenues there, as well as daily admissions, swimming lessons. You get the idea, party rentals. All of that has ceased. And up to that March 13th or 15th, whenever the governor issued the closure, we were tracking on budget. So there's a likelihood that we may have a shortfall in the Aquatic Center budget. We have a little bit of fund balance, but last year we took on replastering of the activity pool to the tune of almost $80,000 with the intent of spending a lot of that fund balance down. So the bottom line is, depending on how long the pool is closed, I'll need to understand whether or not we are obligated to make a transfer to Fund 80 to keep that budget from going negative. Right now, like I said, it's tracking right on target for where we thought it would be. But depending on how much longer it's closed, will determine where that budget is going to end up. So are there questions about the Aquatic Center?
No, Tim, this is Mike. It just makes sense that what you're saying, because if you're shut down because the governor has said shut it down, your revenues are going to stop. There's no disputing that whatsoever. But is there enough of a buffer, as you've it's almost like a buffer that you've indicated is there so they can stay?
Mike, part of the letter to you is Mary's actions. So she's consulted with Newman Pools, as well as we've got Airco Aquatic that assists us with water chemistry. And we've got the pool turned down, the water turned down to 72 degrees. So the utilities are the biggest component of that budget. So Mary's done what she can to keep our utilities in line. And but it's still operating a pool, and maintaining it requires a fair amount of money. And we do have a little bit of fund balance. There will be some buffer, so to speak, but in the end, we'll need to look at that budget pretty closely. And I'll need to understand whether it can, for 1 year, maintain a negative fund balance. And I don't know the answer to that yet, Mike, because that's for us.
Not a problem, Tim. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, normally at this time of the year, we're talking about where we're going for the next budget cycle, next school year. We're doing planning. So I included 2 documents in there, and the first one is the COVID-19 message. And if you pull that out, and if you've read that, basically, this is John Forrester. So he would be a lobbyist for SAA. And he is providing the state's business managers with kind of a guide. And what John is cautioning us is we are in the second year. Next year will be the second year of the biennial budget. And normally we know what our anticipated revenues are going to be. We know the per pupil categorical aid amount, the revenue limit numbers. So we have a lot of knowns. But what John is cautioning is because the revenues for the state of Wisconsin will be down significantly, the legislators might decide to open up and do an emergency budget bill. And that's not unprecedented. And so he's suggesting that it would be prudent to do a best case, a likely case, and a worst scenario budget development. So what I've done is I've provided you with a summary. So the SAA summary document is just a little spreadsheet that I made up. And the best case scenario is what we know with the biennial budget. And what I've done on that document is I've taken out any surplus in the salary budget that was a part of the 2019-20 budget, as well as $75,000 in capital equipment. And that would be the starting point for this school year's budget development. And if you look at that, we have a surplus or monies to deal with of $392,244. From that, we would roll teacher salaries. We would have CPI, I would think, for our other employment groups. We would have some inflation, I would think, for utilities, certainly the bus contract, those kinds of things. And it's likely that we would still need to cut. We'd have a surplus to begin with, but by the time we add all of those items in, we're going to need to figure out how to balance a budget. We have a health insurance increase. It could be an additional $300,000 that we would have to cut. And that's just very preliminary at this point. The middle, where it says no revenue limit and a 26% categorical aid. If you remember that in the governor's budget, they're trying to get aid for special education up from 26%. The budget was set to have 30% reimbursement as a categorical aid. And what happens there is because we're getting less aid from categorical aid in Fund 27, we have to fill that void by taking money from Fund 10 and transferring it to Fund 27. We don't get to cut support to Fund 27. We have to, because of a federal requirement called MOE, we have to maintain that. And if they cut the 4% categorical aid, it means we're going to have less general fund money next year. So we would go from $392,000 to $146,000. Do board members understand what I'm talking about there?
Yes.
Just kind of shake your head.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So then the worst case scenario, John Forrester is suggesting that we look at the revenue limit formula and we take at least $50 per pupil out of it. And if we do, we are going from $9,700 this year to the best case scenario would be $10,000. So we're getting an additional $300,000. He's saying take the 97 and drop it by $50. And what does that do for us? This is one example of it, the benefit of being a district of declining enrollment. You can see on that third case, we only dropped $3,000. And the reason we drop so little is there's a hold harmless provision built into the revenue limit formula that kind of buffers this drop. And we would qualify for that benefit, and it really helps us in this instance. So I think the long and the short of it is as we go forward, I'll kind of keep abreast of what's going on down in Madison, but I'd like to use these three scenarios as a basis for building our budget next year. I guess with that, I'll open it up to questions if people have them.
So Tim, you're going to have 3 projections then?
I think so. Yep.
Wow.
Not a suggestion, but a comment. Sharpen your pencil.
Yeah.
Any indication on which one is most likely?
Jim, I don't. I think the other thing Julie and I had conversations on, there's a lot of unknowns right now. And we've seen the effect on the stock market with COVID. I have not heard a lot about where state revenues are going. But I think with, also with trying to build fund balance as we end this school year, knowing that we might have to tap into them to balance next year's budget. And I just really want us to be prudent. I want us to be cautious until we get more information out of the legislature to know how to build the budget. So, we're taking a look at hirings. I want us to be very frugal in how we spend from this point out and see where our budget goes.
Makes sense.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Any other questions on the budget? Then we will move on to item D, student behavior date.
Okay, Heidi Proyle is going to share the attachment on her screen so that you can look on the screen if you would like. I just would like to thank all of the administrators who worked on this presentation. We originally started with a lot of data because, as you know, we live in a time where we can be inundated with data. But we selected a few we thought the board would be most interested in. And when we start, you'll see that they're negative slides. But what we want to really zero in on, as you already know, as board members, and certainly the folks listening from admin do too, that it's so much more complex than just the negative behaviors. And we continue to be proud, even though we're out of session right now, face-to-face session. We miss those little buggers, and we continue to be proud of the gains that both individual students make and so many of the other students that we find ourselves rarely speaking about. So that being said, we'll start with the discipline incidents by grade level. And you can see that 7th and 8th grade are the highest, and I would caution you to take that with a grain of salt, because we are getting more consistent all the time as a 4K-12 district in how we code discipline incidents, but we're not perfect. We have a ways to go yet, so there is a likely margin of error in this report, but you can see even at 4K, we've had 23 recorded incidents all the way up through grade 12. So then I'll move to the next slide. And this is for this academic year. So it would have been data recorded through March 16th, our last day in face-to-face session. And these are the incidents by type. And so when you as board members and we as administrators talk to teachers, we all know that there's a very small percentage of students who can take up a lot of time and resources, right? So if you look at this, those that are most highly populated would be things like defiance or disruption, disrespect, and then physical aggression. Again, is it a foolproof coding? No, because how do you determine if something is coded as defiance or disruption? So again, we would just caution you that there's a likely margin of error there. And then the last slide I'll comment on are the suspensions by grade level. And what I did when we looked back longitudinally, and we didn't include that slide, but our suspension rates are as high as they've ever been. And I know that sometimes there's a perception because we continually work with students, and suspension is often not our first choice, but that being said, it is inevitable that we will have to suspend kids. And this is the data that you have before you, that we've suspended at every grade level and the number of occurrences. And it does not reflect number of students, however. So at the 4th grade, for example, 8 suspensions, it does not indicate how many students that would be. Likely it is not 8. So now that we have that data, we want to talk about what we're doing about that data. So the next slide, I'll turn over to Donna Smith.
All right, hello everyone. So I just want to get started with focusing on our systems of support at the elementary level. So we do have, I apologize if you can hear my puppy barking in the background. We do have school-wide systems of support, and those are identified for you. All 3 of our buildings have assemblies for PBIS and second step themes. We have PBIS Tier 1 training, our trauma-sensitive school modules. All of our staff are completing. They have completed module 1, have completed modules 2 and 3. The BEST screener, all of our students our teachers have used the BEST screener to also pull data and support our students. AngelList, if you're not familiar with what that is, all of our students actually on the 4K through 12th grade have utilized the AngelList, and what that is it's a relationship mapping tool that allows us to identify students in need of extra support. So students are actually given 4 stickers and asked to think about if they had a problem, if they felt unsafe, or had something really good to share, who would they talk to? And students were given pictures of all of the staff members, and they could identify, use those stickers and put stickers on up to 4 people, staff members in the building. If they couldn't identify someone that they connected with or that they could go to, there was also an area that they could put that sticker in so that we could identify those students that couldn't identify maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4. So we also have that data. There are obviously classroom supports. All of our kindergarten through 3rd grade classrooms have built-in morning meetings, as well as our 4K. They do the second step lessons through our guidance departments. All of our classrooms have take a break areas. Some of our classrooms utilize Class Dojo to track positive and some negative behaviors, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about that in a second, as well as classroom recognition and rewards in the classroom level. We do have student recognition. I want to really emphasize, we focus on that a lot. We want to recognize our students. We want to catch them doing the right thing. We really focus on that positive recognition, whether it be through, a verbal praise, whether it be through Red Robin rewards. We send positive postcards. We have Red Robins Rocking It, CEO, and different avenues of recognizing students for recognition. Heidi, can you click on the Class Dojo link? You shouldn't have to exit. I want to show you on this link, it shows you just one example. So this is data from one classroom. Not all of our classrooms, 4K through 3, are utilizing this as using Class Dojo as a behavior management tool. However, all of my teachers at North Elementary are, and this is just one report. So this teacher recognized and identified 4,000, over 4,000 positive points in their class from the beginning of the school year till our last day so far. This school year, recognizing them for students for positive participation, on-task behavior, line basics, helping other students, and different things. the needs work is only 378, and some of those might be for things such as disrespect, and this is a minor tracking. So in Infinite Campus at the elementary level, we're not consistent with tracking all the minor behaviors. The middle school and high school data also looks a little higher because they are tracking minor behaviors as well as majors in Infinite Campus, and we're not consistent at the elementary as there's a lot of minor behaviors, and so we're using different tools, and Class Dojo is one. I just wanted to speak really briefly. I actually pulled the entire data from my building because I do have all of my classroom teachers, and I had a 98% positive ratio for the school year so far. I had almost 53,000 positive Class Dojo points, and only 1,100 needs work. So it's a 98% positive ratio. One of my teachers had over 12,000 positive Class Dojo points handed out, to their students. So we're really trying to recognize those students that are doing the right thing, and even the students that are struggling, we want to recognize them when they are doing the right thing, because that's how we reinforce those positive behaviors and reinforce the things that they're doing right. On the right, you'll notice some of our behavior data. So at the top, you'll see in the chart the number of discipline events. Those are totaled. All of the elementary data is there combined. So the events for the last couple of months, I didn't put March on there because we didn't have the entire month of March, but January and February, the month of each of those. And then year to date, we had 519 behavior events in Infinite Campus, which is our data tool that we, pull all of our data through. A total of 117 students. But what's really unique, and I want you to make sure that you're focusing on the bottom portion, the bottom chart. It identifies the student count and the number of referrals for students that received either 0 or 1 referral this school year. Year to date, we had 515 students that received either 0 referrals or 1 referral. So that's 86% of our elementary students received either 0 referrals or 1. So we really have only, less than 20% of our students and that are struggling behaviorally. And so it is really important. We think that there's a lot of behavior, but it isn't all of our students. And that's what as an elementary principal team, we wanted to emphasize as well. Any questions at the elementary level?
Okay, we can turn it over to Heather.
I do have a question just for a second on the elementary level. We're seeing all of these numbers that are together for all 3 of the elementaries. Is there a way that we can drive down to see north numbers, west numbers, and east numbers? Can we see the individual schools as well?
We can. Go ahead, Julie.
Well, we did talk about that, Danny, and we felt they were skewed or would present differently than we wanted them to because North has a higher population. So then we thought, okay, let's just give a percentage, which would be accurate, of course. But then, as Donna said, there was a difference in what was recorded in terms of minors and major events. And so until we have that data lock solid, consistently recorded, we didn't want to portray any of our schools differently than the other, if that makes sense.
The other, I guess just to add to that, Julie, at the elementary level, all 3 elementaries are entering all of the majors. However, only East entered, again, not all of the minors, but East did enter some of the minors in the tracking system. So it may look as though East might have more behaviors, when in all reality, they're entering some of the minors. And we thought that that data might be skewed then. So we didn't want it to give you, you know, a different representation. That's why we combined it all together.
Well, I think that we probably have had almost every year, seemed like I remember every year discussions about how inputting behaviors has differed and how we're working on it. But I think we'd still like to see that information and see how it's progressing, and then also how it correlates with the grades.
Yeah,
I ask what you mean by
honestly
that?
do think
What
it's
you mean by
important
grades?
that we need to see the individual schools, even though it might be skewed because one school might be doing something a little different, but then that would help us to see to get all the schools doing the same thing.
And that's what our goal is.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you clarify, Jessica, what, just so I know what you're asking, is it clear you want it to correlate it to student grades? Is that what you're saying?
Part of what we can do with the Fab Lab, or not Fab Lab, the
Five Lab?
Lost the name. But part of what we can do with that is, like you said, we can drill down to even individual students, which we don't need to do. But part of that is we can also drill down on how grades are in each grade level, in each school, also economic factors. So we can factor all that stuff into that and see that presented in there.
Who does that drilling down? Is that each principal drills down for that, or do we have to have Forecast 5 do some of that?
We are still having reconciliation issues with numbers and things, jiving between Infinite Campus, how they're coded in there, and Forecast 5. So I know Kelly worked with our rep prior to this evening to hammer some of that out, and then gave us some of the original slides from which to work. Principals then, I don't know, Amy, I think you had a meeting with Forecast 5 then?
I can speak to that. Amy and I both met with Kelly. She set that up. And now that we have Forecast 5 and the abilities, you're going to see that we're very clunky right now with our data. But with the Forecast 5, once that gets up and running and everything gets correlating with Infinite Campus, you're going to see the same reports. We didn't feel comfortable showing all those reports right now because the stuff that you're seeing in front of you is exactly what we're using with our staff currently. And it's really difficult to get the information. It's easy to get the information out of Infinite Campus, but then to make it look pretty with graphs and so on, that has been a very difficult process. And we've been going through this for like 5-6 years as a district. So with this Forecast 5, it's going to look very similar, and we're going to be able to pull up reports very easily, but we're just in that process, and Kelly is helping lead us through that.
Is Kelly on here where she could speak to some of the questions that are rising up?
Yes. Yep. Did you want me to speak to that?
So what is the missing link with Forecast 5? I know, was it last month or no? The last time we met in person, you had said that Jeff, I forgot who our representative person is, had everything up to date and current.
Yes. So we are working with them. I had principal meetings with the high school and the middle school to go through all their discipline dashboards. And to my knowledge, everything is working well. We're just always going to be going in and looking at the data. One of the things that we found with the high school or the middle school was, for example, is there was a behavior incident that was in July. So obviously that looks odd. So when we drilled down to the student level, we could tell that it was when Heather was working with somebody to show them how to input a behavior incident. So that was, you know, one example of something that we would notice that would be not accurate, but that's all the same system. So they're using Infinite Campus to come up with the numbers that you're seeing on the elementary system of support slide. 5Lab is taking all that information directly out of Infinite Campus, so it's exactly the same numbers. So if there's a misrepresentation in Infinite Campus, it's going to be shown there as well as 5Lab. So it's both. You're going to see discrepancies in both if somebody input the data wrong. So it wouldn't just be in 5Lab if something was entered incorrectly.
We're still reconciling some of that, you and I and Jeff or Ryan or whoever, because the numbers, the enrollment numbers and how they're pulling different from IC and what they're counting as students is different. And we do have to work on reconciling that because it's only as good as what it goes in, both on the IC side and on the 5Lab side. And we need more work in it. Us as administrators need to have more work in it so that we feel comfortable using it with fidelity.
Can we go back to Jessica's original question, and I believe is, can we see the individual schools and individual grades, or is that really not a good idea right now? I mean, that's the.
Within 5Lab, you can absolutely look both of those, drill down to both of those levels to see correlations between academics and behavior incidences.
Are K-3 grades put in IC now? I mean, are they put in? Like a kindergartner would have a grade in there, a first grader would have a grade in IC. So it would pull like actual letter grades?
I said academic achievement. So when we're looking at different pieces of assessment data.
Right, but she had asked her grades. That's why I was asking that as a legitimate question. I don't know what kinds of grades are looking in IC.
No,
now
Heidi, I
at the
believe
high
there's any
school level and middle school
transcript
level, they're gonna have grades. Right.
I don't think there's any transcript for their elementary level.
Right. So at this point, no. At some levels, yes. At some levels, no. So it's still a work in progress.
So we really should have a time that we can come together and Kelly and Ryan and Jeff and whomever can make a presentation for us to see, for all of us to see what this 5Lab can really do for us.
Yeah, did we have him here last year to show us?
Mm-hmm.
So we
but I think, Andy, wasn't that prior to the administrators having the access that they have now?
Wasn't that the guy that came when Colleen was here? He gave the presentation in the library?
So Judy, is that a reasonable request to see this at a presentation the next time? Well, not necessarily the next time we read in person, but sometime when we meet in person?
Revisit the behavior slides or the student, as we're calling it, student engagement slides?
Well, I guess that's where we'd like to start. I think you're saying you'd like to see more of what this could do, correct?
Correct. I think for everybody to see more what this program can do and how it can function right in the moment, in the present. But I do understand that all the information that goes into Forecast 5 is pulled from Infinite Campus. So Forecast 5 information is not going to be as strong if the information from Infinite Campus isn't loaded properly. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, and sometimes we think it's loaded properly. When Kelly presented to the board on Forecast 5, and I know she had Ryan on standby if necessary, she went over its capabilities with you. And I recall her saying like something like a dash in a data entry point can throw everything off. And then and when I say we, it's not me because I'm not, I don't have that understanding or knowledge, but Ryan would have to go in on his end and fix that. So when Heather said it's clunky, it is, although I would say Kelly has the best understanding of it. And like Heather herself told me after that tutorial refresher, she felt a bit more equipped to dive into, but I would say we're still in our infancy stages of using it.
Julie, if I could add, as someone that's using the Forecast 5 analytic tools more regularly than probably our principals are, Danny, specifically to address your point, it's really a data analytics tool. So they're using a software to develop these really high definition, very easy to use analytical tools. But you have to have a basic understanding of manipulating the data. So if Kelly, working with the account manager, can develop these dashboards where this is the data that we want to be looking routinely at. So they develop an analytical tool that can produce that data readily for you. But it's the whole struggle of learning one more piece of software on top of the software that you're already using. And I struggle with it all the time with 5Cast that I use. But if you can get through it, the analytical tools that they provide are really high power. And Kelly, I may be speaking out of turn, but I mean, that's really the advantage of once we get the system, someone, and hopefully multiple people, will understand how to drive the analytic and then even tweak the tool that they want to look at for the data they're trying to investigate. But that takes a lot of learning. And right now, it's a communication between the database that we have and the software tool.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is
so
that,
Tim, so can it just run a big regression and say spit out GPA and consider data and poverty and all that stuff? Do you just have to turn that into a dash plate and you could run one for every school or every kid?
Yes.
Well, and so JD, when I showed you the teacher compensation model last time, we had a line of best fit with the data. I didn't do the regression analysis, Tableau did, through the Forecast 5 analytical tool. And once you understand it and you're able to, I'm grabbing data from DPI instead of Infinite Campus. So it's analogous to it, but there is a lot of learning. And in my case, it's one person to learn it like Kelly's learning it. And now to try to transfer that knowledge to the principals, the assistant principals, and the teachers that need it, I think that's where I can see the struggle coming from.
JD, to answer your question, it's all developed. They're already put into dashboards. So all of our Fontes and Pinnell data is put into a dashboard. Principals just click on Fontes and Pinnell dashboard, and then it all comes up in graphs. Same with several different kinds of data. So it's data coming from a lot of different places. Infinite Campus is one of them. And they're all built into automatically populated dashboards with graphs.
I remember the graphs. I just didn't know if it could actually do any statistics. Like, can we make it do statistics instead of just make a graph? Like, it's run a correlation or run a regression or, multivariate. Or is that just not something we're really that worried about?
I would say the next step is that the first time that we had this presented to us in October, they were still building the dashboards. And so now the dashboards are built. And now the next step is for us, as Tim's point is as the administrators, to have more training and have more understanding, because now we can see that data, we see the dashboards. Now would be a good time to not necessarily at the board level, because you've seen the capabilities, we know the capabilities. It's about having us dig in and seeing, before we push that out to teachers, we need to mess around in this. We need to start looking at it, pulling data, doing that kind of stuff, and learning, because this isn't just something you just pick up and understand. So I think that's where, to me, that's where the next step would be.
Okay, well, I think we can go back. We can come back to this at a future meeting. I think if there's things in particular that board members would like to see, you can put that email and send it to Julie and Kelly and myself. And we'll come back to it another meeting.
Makes sense, Andy.
Thank you, Andy.
So do you want this to go on then to middle school?
Yes.
Heather? Alrighty, let me present. Can you see that? Okay.
Okay, so what we do the same information 4th through 7th grade, but because our 4th and 5th grade coming in new this year, as you could heard from Donna, we're really at different stages with people utilizing Infinite Campus and then majors, minors, etc. Well, our 4th and 5th grade teachers went ahead and they are using Infinite Campus. A lot of times people think it's time consuming to put in the referral. It's not. It's like anything else. Once you start moving in it, it's pretty simple, but it's one more thing to do. So we are all doing it, but Amy and I both treat it very carefully. Do you need help? Would you rather us put it in Infinite Campus? I mean, we take a look at each one of our individual staff members and see where they're at, because everybody has different levels of how they feel comfortable. So with 4th and 5th grade, they are doing majors and minors in, and you can see like the total of events, etc. Heidi, could you click on our snapshot?
4th, 5th, the first one on the left?
Yeah, they're both
I
the
see
same.
two. Oh, okay.
So this information, we did do it 4-7 right away in the beginning of the year. Amy Reichel's one of our instructional assistants. And through our PBIS district system, we have data grabbers at each school. So again, we've been working on this for about 5 years using Infinite Campus. Infinite Campus is clunky. Forecast 5 is not clunky. It is really simple. And within a matter of one day, we were able to get a report, which is called the Big 5 report, working with Kelly and the person, I think it's Ryan. So this Big 5 report pulls what you're seeing in this snapshot, and you can just kind of scroll around. So there's an overall snapshot. We incorporate what's going on positively, because we put our positive contacts in Infinite Campus as well. And then what are the events for each grade level, how many students involved, and then we also accumulate the year to date. Everything you see here that we are hand putting in, which is time consuming, is done very easily. Now that we've seen it last week on Forecast 5, it just pops up very easily. So I had a conversation with Amy Reichel the other night, and I said, you're doing a great job, but we have just made your job much easier. And then I contacted Kelly today, and I asked when we're going to talk about it as administrative team tomorrow, like when can we make sure that we as administrators feel comfortable with this information, really from the discipline point of view at this point in time, because it is difficult to kind of grab all this data and make it really beneficial for the teachers to see, because then what we do is we expect our teachers to do what's called a precision statement. What are you seeing overall? and what do we need to do? What are some reteaching? For instance, our 4th grade teachers, they base this data and they take a look at what's going on, and they do recess reteaching, lunchroom reteaching, parent contact through that. What are some maybe different types of, maybe we have a setup that's not well. Maybe we're dismissing everybody at the same time to go to the cafeteria, and that's causing some issues. So we look at all that, and this data does help bring those things to point. Otherwise, we're just having conversations and we're not really going anywhere. So if you look on the bottom, there's actually tabs that then digress into 4th grade specifically and 5th grade specifically. And then there is another one, it really digs down with the student specific names. But what we decided, we used to show the students' names at the high flyers, the students that would have more than 2 referrals in a month. And what we found out and feedback from our staff, from our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade staff, was when they saw the student's name, they didn't feel like they were looking at the universal conversation. They felt like they were just, what is this kid doing wrong and what might we be able to do? But we still saw all the same kids kept showing up all the time. So what were we really doing? So we do have that information and we share that as needed. Again, that can also be on the Forecast 5 as well. And a lot of times that information helps with wraparound services when we sit down, and if they have a student that they have on their service as well, through North Central Healthcare or whatever, sometimes that information is very pertinent. Like, is there something that we're doing at the school that's not setting the child up for success? And we tell our staff that put in the behavior referrals, because that just gives us data points so that we can try to make better decisions for students that are struggling, and or students that are maybe they are getting a lot of positive feedback through awards or events or positive shout outs and postcards. But then let's take a look at the correlation. How is the student doing that is having a lot of referrals? Are they getting any positive feedback? And how are we correlating that? We also, if you go to the next slide, our 6th and 7th grade has the same exact snapshot.
Oops, sorry.
Just in reference to 6th and 7th grade. So again, we do this every month. It's correlated at the end of the month. And we always show the accumulation year to date. And then we share it out so that our staff, including our instructional assistants, we dig into that specific data. And again, Forecast 5 has all of this very simplistic to dig into, and I'm excited to get ready to share it whenever we feel comfortable sharing that out. Each school that has a data grabber can also use this. I don't think it's not rocket science. If you look at one specific, like again, we talked about our big 5. What's the location that the incidents are happening? How often is it happening? And that really helps us make some precision statements. And then on the back end, the first thing that I saw, like I know the number of in school or out of school suspensions that we have as a whole. But when you look at a graph and you see that that's how many you have, be it a few students that are repetitive, or if there is a number of students, that's something that needs to be addressed. Like, what are we doing, and what are some other opportunities, and what are things we can do differently as staff? What are some maybe different scheduling or different things within our system? Because all of our students are very unique and diverse. So I am really excited to be able to see this fab and it's make sure that we can dig into it. And I don't have any concerns with the teachers being able to dig into this if it's a teacher leader, because not everybody is passionate about every data point. And I think when you allow people to look at things, it's going to shed light on, have better conversations through collaboration. So this is what we are currently using, but I'm very excited that we're going to be able to use this other analytic process.
Okay. High school, or do you have questions for Heather? Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Sorry.
No problem. What we are looking to do is just continue to build from what Donna said and what Heather said. So thank you to both of you for presenting. At the high school, we're really focusing on building relationships. So last year we added what we call an advisory model, where one staff member has about 12 to 15 students that they see Monday and Friday. And the goal of that time is to, number one, build relationships, form peer relationships, work through different activities, work through icebreakers, talk about scheduling, future, academic and career planning. So our main focus this school year and last school year is really building relationships. How do we equip teachers to build relationships? We utilize the Angel List as well. Which students have relationships, which ones don't? How can we hook teachers up with these students that need somebody in their life? So in order to build relationships, it's a lot of teacher planning, a lot of meetings in the summer to plan our advisory lessons. And during that lesson planning time, each teacher takes like a segment, maybe it's a month that they're interested in, and we build it with the PBIS theme. So if it's courage or strength, our high school lessons are still meeting the requirements that elementary and middle school do. So the graph you're looking at here, again, very similar. The top is obviously the grade levels. On the left side, we have starting with negative referrals. So for instance, 8th grade has 399 referrals. However, only 86 students take up the number of referrals. And I'm going to continue going down. 8th grade has 82 positive referrals, but that reached out and hit 134 students. Okay, so the two different segments here are referrals by event and then referrals by student. So as you can see, that very bottom row, we're hitting over 150 positive referrals in every grade level. And our goal at the high school is that every student receives a positive postcard throughout the school year. And before we left, we were already at 70%, which is amazing. And we're going to continue to build on these positive referrals because once students have relationships with staff, learning occurs, stability occurs, trust, loyalty, and that's going to improve all of our grades and culture and climate within the building. Matt and Clint, anything you want to add? Mary, I really like your shirt. You want to show everyone?
Taken out of the rummage sale.
Oh, shoot. Any questions for the high school?
No, I don't have any. Thank you for all three of you presenting. And we will pull my agenda up here. Unless there's any more questions on this, we'll go on to the item. And let's see.
He's talking in Star Trek language.
Who's is somebody want to make some comments on the copy machine here?
Andy, I'll take it. Okay, so this one is just I want to bring forward to the monthly board meeting, but we are in the process of selecting a new vendor or selecting new equipment, copying equipment, and we had a 5-year lease that we extended 1 additional year with consolidation. So what you're seeing is Aaron Wick and I went out to the Wisconsin Vendor Network, and we borrowed their copy machine specifications and put an RFP together and sent it out to the major vendors sponsored by the state of Wisconsin and vetted by the state of Wisconsin. And you can see on the sheet on the far right-hand side gives you an annual usage of what we do for copies. For those of you that don't have access to the attachment, we did almost 4 million black and white copies this past year and 1.1 million color copies. And on the very far right corner is E.O. Johnson is our current vendor. And you can see our total annual copying costs of about $96,000. So we've had equipment issues at the high school and at the middle school where those machines are towards the end of their life, as well as some of the elementary buildings. So this would take effect July 1, and you can see the 3 vendors and the 4 different options there. And somehow between now and the end of the month, we've got to figure out which vendor to select. I did reach out and do reference checks on them, and I have some concerns with the low vendor, Marco. Some of the references that I checked were not stellar, and the equipment may be undersized for the production needs of the copying. So I'll continue to work on this. I'm not prepared to give a recommendation yet. E.O. Johnson with their HP solution is one that we're considering. But if you look at the color cost difference there, they have what's called an educational color and a professional color. And you can see that the professional color is 50% more. And that's what makes that bid competitive, the educational color does. And I want to have the principals weigh in on whether they think that that would be satisfactory. So we've got a little bit of work to do, but you'll see that come forward. And by the April board meeting, I'll be ready to make a recommendation.
Tim, what do we use currently? It says E.O. Johnson current and then the HP and Canon devices.
Okay, so currently we have Konica Minolta.
Okay.
And we're very, very happy with that equipment. It's been very good equipment. E.O. Johnson took it over from Office Enterprises. They bought them out. And their preferred solution is Canon. But you can see Canon is the highest priced version. And then they've got this HP solution where they think because of the education color, it may be economical for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Tim, this is Mike. This Marco that you had the concerns on, where are they out of?
They have a branch in Wausau. They're owned by West Fargo Bank, I think. So I'm a little concerned that they may be a spinoff. I checked with one district that gave them a very, very high review. And I checked with another district that gave them an extremely low review. So, and the one that was low was just took them on this July 1. So the equipment is still brand new and they're having weekly problems with them.
Okay.
And copy machines should be something where you push a button and you walk away and it just happens. We shouldn't have to worry about it. But I do want to have the principals involved in the selection for the color because that could be a major deal breaker for us.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep. So more next at the end of the month.
And then we'll go on to action items, and we'll start with that public hearing request. And I think if somebody'd like to make a motion.
I move the board approve the request to waive hours of instruction requirements from the Department of Public Instruction pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 118.38 subsection 1 subsection A. The board will consider the criteria established by Wisconsin Statute 121.02 subsection 1 subsection F and PI 8.01 subsection 4 Wisconsin Administrative Code.
I'll second that.
Did you? Mary Kay, you got a motion and a second there. Who made those?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So any questions or comments on this? Then we'll just go ahead and vote on it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, then we'll move on to the busing. And Kim, I assume you're talking about.
Yeah, Andy. So there's several documents uploaded to Board Docs. And the first one that I'd like you to take a look at is if you could open the contracts. So I've got a copy of the contract listed.
Mhm.
And if you go down to paragraph number 13, and I've had, I did send a copy of the contract to Mike Winters. And, you know, because of the closure, Malliot's has really, they've been forced that they can't possibly fulfill the contract because there's no transportation to provide. And Mike's reading of paragraph 13, if you look at that, the district reserves the right at its discretion to change or decrease the bus routes as appropriate. And they actually use, for example, closure of school as one of the examples. Now, I don't think the intent of the contract was ever not to pay because we're going to be closed for a month. I mean, that was never, ever assumed. But the language there, from a legal standpoint, Mike's interpretation is the district is not obligated to pay anything other than for days when they are transporting students or for snow days. Okay, the next item I would like you to take a look at. Do people have questions on the contract? Okay, the next item I'd like you to take a look at is take a look at Tim Grosskreuz's letter to the board.
Mhm.
You know, I think what's important is I think Tim does a very nice job laying out the company's long-term commitment to the district. And Tim's sole client, customer is the children of Antigo School District. So it's not like tomorrow he can change gears. All of his capital equipment is tied up for hauling our students. And I think he lays out a pretty good argument. Through this whole process of the CARES Act, Tim has been forwarding me documentation and articles from the National School Bus Transportation Association. And I've included an article that Tim had forwarded to me entitled, "Pay Attention to the School Bus Industry Before It's Too Late." And the author of that article lays out a pretty good case as to why districts should be fulfilling their contract obligations. And then finally, SAA came out with, they asked Attorney Mike Joka, to render his opinion on the CARES Act. So I ask you to open that document up. And Mike references a section of the CARES Act, section 18006. And, right within the CARES Act, it says that, districts shall, to the greatest extent practicable, continue to pay its employees and contractors during this period of any disruption as it relates to coronavirus. So that's kind of the framework that I'd like to frame this discussion in tonight. I think there's no question. Tim received payment back on April 3rd for the 10-day period from closure. So he received I think it was the March 16th regular day transportation bill. And then he received 9 additional days based on the snow day rate. So Tim's standard, the Mallet's next payment would have been this past Friday because it's biweekly. And so he has not received payment. I'm waiting for the outcome of this meeting to decide where to go with that payment. So if I might add, my thought on this is in Tim's letter, he lays out the case where he has recommended that his employees up until Monday were to file for unemployment. And he's looking at it as, if there's the potential for them to get additional monies through unemployment, through the the stimulus package for his employees, that's probably a good thing to do. I think talking with Mike Winter and reading Jolka's opinion, I don't think it's prudent for the district for the potential for double dipping, where taxpayers might be paying Mallet Bus Company for driver transportation wages, and yet the drivers themselves file for unemployment and receive compensation through the stimulus package and regular unemployment. So that would be a cost that I wouldn't feel comfortable paying at this point. The other cost that I wouldn't feel comfortable paying would be fuel. Now, unfortunately for Mallet's, they made a fuel purchase days prior to school closure. They needed fuel and they bought it. So Tim the company is sitting on what I understand are full fuel reserves. Yet that's somewhat of an operational savings account. I mean, there's certainly a lot of equity in that fuel and it will get used at some point. So I do not know the details of Mallet's operation, the financial details of that operation, any more than I know the financial details of any other contractor that we work with. But if we look at driver labor and fuel as variable costs that they have the potential to defer, I think it would be prudent for us to pay the balance of the fixed costs. We need Mallet Bus Company when DPI says we're going to open. And I think they deserve, given their long history with the district, they deserve to know what our commitment to them is. What I worry a little bit is deferring payment for Tim. We're at the end of our 5-year contract. And we've begun negotiations with them, but they've kind of stalled out. And there's a lot of unknowns. And certainly right now for Mallet's, there's an awful lot of unknowns. And I think if we push too hard now, we're going to end up paying for it later because we're going to have to come to an agreement with them for transportation for next school year. They've been a long-term partner and we need them. I think we need to be fair. Determining what that fairness is something that the board will have to do. But I look at fuel and not knowing all about miles per gallon and fuel costs. I'm estimating that number to be somewhere between 10 and 15% of the contract Tim's cost. I also think the bus driver wages are something in the neighborhood of 20 to 25% of his operational cost. And that's really just on the back of a napkin calculations. I've looked at it and that's the best I can come up with. So I think those variable costs are somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to as high as 35% of Tim's revenues. And I think the other overhead, these fixed costs are just that. So I think if I was in your position, I would be looking at a number that would be between 65 and 75% of his contract is something that we should be considering.
Tim, did Tim Grosskirth, he didn't want to share any more exact figures with you on his labor cost or fuel cost?
The labor costs are in his contract. So Andy, what I did to come up with that number is I took the number of bus routes, the number of drivers, we obviously have a driver for every route. And then I know just anecdotally talking with Tim, how many hours they get paid for the route. So that was pretty straight, where I looked at that time and said, okay, we've got 25 regular ed bus routes and 4 special ed bus routes and some intermodal, and the contracted rate is this. He is likely paying more than what the contracted rate is, I would think. But, and that number came up to 22% of what we pay him. And then when I did that same calculation for the miles driven and plugged in an estimated miles per gallon, that number came to about 12.5%. But again, I don't have actual figures. I've asked him if he's went ahead and applied for the payroll protection under the CARES Act, and Tim is investigating that. He is working on an application. He is uncertain whether he may be a little bit late. He's uncertain what the benefit might be for him. So he hasn't completed the application. His financial institution that he deals with was no longer accepting applications after the first day or so.
Correct. And I know I looked into that a little bit, and unless the federal government puts some more money into that program, if you're applying now, it's too late.
Yep.
But they may put more money in it. So the bottom line there is you kind of came up with a number of 35%.
Yeah, I think, Andy, that's an educated guess at best.
And then it's not related, but when we talk about the next 5-year contract that we would do, are we going to bid that out to other, I know when we did, we had maybe 3 or 4 bus companies bid on that.
Andy, I don't know if that was my intention. And again, there's a 70-year relation or 75-year relationship with them. You went through 5 years of just this first 5 years now with having one contractor. We can go down that road. I know that Mallette's had to purchase additional capital to get all the routes. And then, I don't know where that is in terms of necessarily, where that loan for that equipment is at this point. And that isn't something I need to know. But I think, if we're going to do that, I think Tim would need more notice than, because my intention was to work with him to negotiate another 5-year term. If the board would like me to go out, I don't think now is the time to go out, because I think there's enough, there's a driver shortage. I don't think bus companies are aggressively going after new business like they might have been even 3 years ago.
Okay, maybe that question was really, is there anybody on the board who would think we need to go out yet, or are we okay with Tim moving forward, just negotiating with Mallette? And I think, Tim, you have told me, I don't know if you said this at the board meeting, but that Malliette's pretty competitive compared to what other districts are paying. Is that correct?
Yes. Very much so.
If I can just come in here for a couple of things here, Tim. One, I think you're pretty close in what you're saying about the 35%. Just looking at the numbers and following along with you, I think you're pretty close with that. So that would be a good figure to work with being able to help Tim and Malliette Company. Putting this out on RFP, I don't know if it's a good idea, bad idea, but I agree with you, Tim. I don't know of any bus companies that are really looking for business at this time. I think the companies that are close, that are around, that are nearby us are doing what they can just to keep the drivers and the staff that they have, because there is a shortage of drivers all around us, not just with us, but all around every company. The other question, I don't know if it's not necessarily busing related, but are there any other local little mom and pop businesses, Tim, that we do business with the school that may be affected? I don't know what those businesses are. I know my son has told me that the lunch line, they have some of the pizza places bring in pizzas. If we're going to help out and continue in this contract, and I'm not totally against anything here with this, but are we also going to look at all the other businesses that we may have an agreement or a contract with? I may be overstepping there. I just want to throw that out there. But back to the RFP, if we put it out there, we probably won't get anything at this point.
My concern about any of this is that what's going to happen when a public finds out that we're paying for a service that we're not receiving? And you have to remember that you're talking about having a referendum. And is that going to jive once we pay Malliette? I mean, Malliette's doing a great job, and I appreciate what they're doing. But I don't believe in paying for something that we're not receiving.
Jeannie, if I may speak to that, the one, Mike Jalka, if you read his argument, you're looking at a very specialized industry. Yellow school buses can only be used to transport students. And I think of today was the first day it really hit me when we were loading lunches for our students. I had to get a request to the state DOT as a waiver to allow us to even transport lunches in those buses. Malliette's has, buses are $100,000 a piece, and I'm sure Danny knows this more than me. The capital outlay for the school year, Tim's got nowhere else to go with that equipment. And we could need to turn that service on almost at a moment's notice. And I think he has to have reassurances that we want him to do that. And the one way we can show him that is the financial commitment, because there is value there knowing that we want to be able to start school. Here's the day. We want to be able to do summer school. We want field trips. We want athletics. And his company is responsible for making that happen. And I don't think it's like a transport business where we can take a generic 53-foot van. It's different. It's very, very specialized business.
Tim, this is Mike. I
understand that.
That was very aptly put, Tim, but I also think part of it, what we have to look at too, this is a local business that we're supporting, that supports us when we need them. And right now, unfortunately, because of some other crap that's going on, we can't use them. But as you said, they have to be ready for us at a moment's notice. So I think to compensate them for that service that they provided us all these years and will continue to provide us in the future, provide we contract with them, it is something we really need to think about and understand it's not an expense that maybe we all agree with, but in the best interest of community and the best interest of the district, it's one that we need to make.
I think having considered be a critical service, and it is our responsibility to ensure that we are able to provide that critical service when we need to. But with that being said, I think the thing that we should really consider is the judgment that Tim provided in the Boardman Clark note, where it was the judgment that shall, to the greatest extent practicable, continue to pay its employees and contractors during the period of any disruptions or closures related to coronavirus. So specifically relating to coronavirus in this judgment, that we should continue to provide our end of the contract as best we can during this pandemic. So I think that the onus falls to us that we should accept that responsibility. Whether or not I 100% agree with it, looking at this judgment legally should, and ethically, I think we should too.
Tim, let me ask a question one more time, just so I can clarify this in my mind. We're not going to be paying the 100% cost. We're only going to be paying the 65 to 70% of the cost, because it's the cost minus the employee wages and the fuel wages, correct?
That would be my interpretation, Danny, one way to look at it. And I think, knowing that the drivers have the opportunity to file for unemployment,
right?
We shouldn't have an opportunity where taxpayers are paying twice. Right. I think they should pay once, and like Jim says, the CARES Act is imploring us to do that, but it's not imploring us to do it twice.
So to piggyback on that, Tim, I am completely in favor of taking care of Malliette with that 65, 70%, because, the employees there are being taken care of through the unemployment benefits and the extras through the stimulus. And then the fuel, he's already filled the tanks up. Those tanks will last him the rest of this school year. So I think that's great. The other thing I want to add is, do we have other contracts or agreements with other, I want to say, quote, mom and pop businesses in town that we might need to look at as well? I'm sorry, I don't know if that's making sense, Tim.
Danny, what it is, and that jogged, a thought that I hadn't even considered. I think of the impact to our Fifth Avenue folks, just about anybody along Main Street, wherever street you call it. They're all struggling, and we had everything from Buck's Pizza to Little Caesars to Pizza Hut delivering pizzas, and I don't know how many a day, but you guys see the bills where it's thousands of dollars a month. That has ended too. So I could certainly have that conversation with Sarah DeBoer. Cold pizza, maybe not the most flavorful snack or lunch, but I mean, we've all eaten it, right? So we should at least investigate that. That's a good thought.
And Tim, thank you for all your extra hard work that you're doing and checking, making sure that we're touching base with all of our could-be agreements that we have around town, because like you said, up and down Fifth Avenue, north side of town, they're all struggling. And, I just want to be fair across the board to everybody. But I'm in complete favor of that 65, 70%. I don't know if we need to throw that into that motion now. I know we didn't say a motion in the beginning, but that would be, I'd be in favor of that, and I'd back that up all day.
Okay. So I guess this would probably be a good time for somebody to go ahead and make a motion.
Move the board to approve the payment of, can we do a floating number of 65 to 70%? Or does it have to be a static number?
You could do the 65 and then we could always change it if
Okay.
need in the future.
I move the board to approve the payment of 65% of the 2019-2020 transportation contract between the Unified School District of Antigo and the Maliet Bus Company, Inc. Payment terms according to paragraph 31, paid on a biweekly basis for missed school days through June 5th, 2020.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any
Danny,
further
who
discussion?
seconded? I'm sorry. Who seconded it?
Danny.
I did, Mary. Danny.
Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions?
Yeah, so Tim, do you think that Tim was just asking for the full contract as a matter of formality to have it on record, or you think that's what he really intends to get?
Well, we've had, I've had a little bit of conversations with Julie about this. We have taken over the 5-year period, and I should go back and to see how many routes we had at the start of the 5-year versus what we've had now. I've told you we cut 6 routes last year. When the average route is between $30,000 and $35,000, you can do the math. The year prior, I think we did 2 or 3 routes. And so Tim has been trimming his revenue all along over the 5-year period. And I think he's to the point where our next contract negotiation will be more difficult because the terms of the contract are very, very tight for him. So, he would argue that I think, the variable costs that I've talked about, fuel and labor, his fixed costs may be higher than what I think they are. I don't know, but so I think, we can revisit it if we have to at the end. I think this is a prudent start. I'd like to get him a check so that he can, still cash flow and everything. And at least he knows his position now. And like Dr. Deep said, we can always come back and revisit it. So I think this is a good start.
I
Then
would like
say,
to know
Tim,
a monetary value of this.
it's like
Pardon?
$166,000 that we're docking off. So we'd only be paying a total of $310,000, right? If we took 35%. So in theory, the district is saving money during the non-usage, right, Tim?
Yeah, we should be saving fuel and saving labor, correct. JD, I think there was a 10-day payment in there, so it might not be quite the figure that was calculated, but it's close to that, yes.
We're essentially, Jeannie, it's a local bus company bailout. They're talking about the airlines. They're talking about, sounds like something we have to do, even though it's not very much fun. People aren't that pleased we're paying the teachers right now when they're not in school
And
too.
I understand that. I really do. But I don't know. I guess I'm old school. My father's been in business for years and years and years, and I seen him go through a lot of crisis in his business, and no one was bailing him out.
No, Jeannie, times have changed a lot, and bottom line is we have to take care of our own, especially if we want them to be there in the future.
Yeah, I would say that's.
I just know there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be upset with this.
And there will always be people upset, but sometimes there is a cost to doing business and taking care of people, and that's the job that we have to do. And yeah, we're going to take some heat for it, but that's our job too.
Jeannie,
Okay,
I think that bus drivers would do a lot to spread the good word that the district was kind enough to keep the school bus company going during a hard time. They have a lot of influence on what goes on.
And I understand
people
that.
are talking about.
But none of this money is going to the bus drivers. It's putting hay in Maliet's barn, is how he quoted it.
Well, it still goes towards the bus drivers. I mean, whether they work it out to pay the bus drivers in addition or have a plan for the bus drivers, they're going to know.
ensuring that Marriott-
if you don't take care of Marriott now, we'll pay the difference when we got to get a bus company from somewhere else to come in here. And do buses.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Any further comments, questions? Then Mary Kay, we'll do a roll call vote on this.
Okay. Balzer?
Yes.
Balzer? Goldig?
Yes.
Deep?
Yes.
Long? No. Mead?
Yes.
Neufeld?
Yes.
Hyatt?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
And Mary?
Yes. Okay. Then we'll move on to item C, Neola policy update, social media, especially first reading. And I think we just look for a motion on this.
I move the board approve the first reading of Neola policy update 29.1 and social media special update.
I'll
Seconded.
Mary Kay, did you get who seconded that?
I got Jeannie as a second.
Okay. Any discussion on this?
Nope.
Have we got any questions about any of the changes? Then
No,
we will,
Andy, I looked through them and it's just all boilerplate language changes, updating it to current language and current terminology for the most part.
okay, thank you. Then we will go ahead and let's do a roll call on this, Mary Kay.
Okay. Goldig?
Yes.
Deep?
Yes.
Long? Yes. Mead?
Yes.
Neufeld?
Yes.
Hyatt?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Balzer?
Yes.
And Mary?
Yes. We'll go on to item D, technology purchases.
I move the board approve the bid of $31,095 from Camera Corner / Connecting Point for upgrading the staff laptops, elementary 2:1, MS 2:1, class of 2024 Chromebooks. I move the board approve the bid of $66,675.20 from CDW for district Chromebooks, elementary 2:1 iPads. I move the board approve the bid of $12,956 from Apple for the elementary iPads. Total technology purchase of $110,726.20.
I will second all three of those motions.
Okay. I guess we're doing all three of them at once. Any questions or comments on any of them?
No, I don't know if Mark's still on here and he has a comment to make on him or something.
I'm still here. Thank you for approving this. It'll really help us get these get the ball rolling here with the COVID situation. They're definitely slowing up the process of getting the products in. So I'm hoping doing it now we'll be able to get it in by June and not have to worry about auditors or anything like that. So I appreciate your patience and I appreciate your support.
And Tim, all this money was in the budget. This was budgeted.
it is in my budget to pay for it. It's in there every year. It's not a special account.
Okay, thank you. Then if there's no more questions, we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay, Deep,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Balzer,
Yes.
Boldig,
Yes to all three motions.
Mary.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all three of those motions passed. We'll go on to middle school lockers.
I move the board approve the low quote from Republic Storage Systems of $50,230 for middle school lockers.
Second.
Where are these lockers going?
I'm not gonna tell you.
So I can talk to that. These are replacing the 7th grade lockers and the 6th grade lockers. The 7th grade lockers especially are very old. Well, they're all very old, but the 7th grade ones are very different in size. So some of them are quite wide where you could almost I could fit my shoulders possibly in them, but some of them are so skinny you can't even put a backpack in there hardly. So they're really unevenly sized and they've not been updated. When we removed some of those lockers from the cubbies, for the cubbies that we got for the 4 and 5, we found pictures and notes from the 60s. They're very old.
And
Some of us are that old, but so be careful.
But you're in
So
better
what
shape than metal lockers.
What are the plans for those lockers that you're replacing? Where do those go?
The lockers that we remove?
Yeah.
We put them on our surplus auction site.
Okay. You're not gonna ship them to somewhere in Africa?
Sorry, you broke up on that.
You're not shipping them somewhere to some poor country somewhere?
No, typically they only want the desks, tables, chairs that we can ship overseas. If there was a need, we would definitely look into that, but we've been able to actually move them pretty good on the surplus sites.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And if they're very narrow, they'll probably have screwdriver storage.
Right.
Are these going to be like lockers and not like the cubbies that we have for the 4th and 5th grade, right? They're going to be regular lockers with doors. Okay.
Okay. If there's no more questions or comments, we will do a roll call vote.
Okay, Long,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Balzer,
Yes.
Boldig,
Yes.
and Mary.
Yes.
Yes. And so we'll move on to item F, middle school playground equipment.
I move the board approve the code for middle school playground equipment from Lee Recreational as presented and not to exceed $35,310.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments?
Andy, was there a reason that we only had the one bid? Did we only receive from one company? I don't know.
Jake, I think that's a question for you.
Yep. Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah. So when we look at playground equipment, for the most part, there are, if you want a swing set, there's some similarities there. But when you get into the more specific items such as the the doorknob jam, the over under Mighty Max, they're really, in all playground, equipment to an extent as a enjoyable aspect and, you know, kind of a luxury item, if you will, over just a straight up comparable. So if we were to go to a different company, we could get some similar equipment, but you know, it may be, it's not really apples to apples. So most of this equipment, I really feel is just, you know, it's a one of a kind type thing that this company has came and talked with some of our principals or the Champs group, you know, and this is a company that we've worked with in the past that I feel very comfortable with. We bought the last swing set that we purchased last summer from them, and they've done a wonderful job, and it's a preferred vendor through our insurance carrier as well, which is a big piece of playground equipment to make sure that it's installed or manufactured and installed properly. Not saying that there's not other providers out there, but this is one of a few that they do like. So at that point, I guess I really felt that it being more of a luxury item and, you know, a personal preference type option, that I didn't feel like a competitive bid would really be a true apples to apples comparison.
Jake, you should have been at the convention down in Milwaukee in January. They had a really interesting merry-go-round set up there. I tried to get Jessica and Jeannie to get on it, but they wouldn't.
Well, if you ever do,
Happy at night.
And
Okay.
Something for the future.
I guess the intent is, you know, with talking with Tim and his concerns that you heard earlier with the budgets and the unknowns, we would try and be as responsible as possible in ordering these pieces. This necessarily wouldn't just be a hit every line item tomorrow type option, but I want the board to be aware of what we would like to purchase, and as the funding becomes available, be able to do that. And also items such as the $7,500 for the assembly and installation, depending on how our summer goes with my staff, we may be able to install all of it or some of it on our own and possibly lower that too. And that's why I said not to exceed the $35,310.
Jake, I see Amy's on here now too. Amy, these items that are picked out here, is that going to be they'll be really nice for those students in that age group?
So the items that we picked, we've had some parent feedback this year because we just weren't able to get around to purchasing a lot of playground equipment for this school year. And our playground is much improved, but it's still a little sad by all aspects if you compare to other elementary schools, what they might have. So in talking with the kids, they really like swings. The swings, they're waiting turns even in the cold winter months. So we wanted to definitely get more swings. And the elements that we looked at purchasing are kind of like Ninja Warrior type of elements. So that if you watch that show, they're more like obstacles and kind of climbing and jumping and over under type things that you could make little obstacle courses with and a little more free thinking. So it's not like slides and monkey bars, and it's more of more interactive and where several kids could be playing at once, where it wouldn't just be one student able to use it.
Sounds like fun. I can't wait to see them up. Not that I'm going to get on them because I'm not built for that.
You're a merry-go-round kind of guy, Danny.
You betcha. You get on it, I will too, Mike.
Deal.
Push it.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this item? And then we'll go ahead with a roll call vote.
Okay. Mead,
Yes.
Neufeld,
Yes.
Pyatt,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Balzer,
Yes.
Boldig,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
and Mary.
Yes. And we'll go on to item G, resignations.
I move the board approve the resignation of Catherine Hoyt, food service, effective March 19, 2020.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll go on to new hires.
I move the board approve the limited term contract for Lena Hickman, middle school math teacher, effective March 16, 2020.
I'll second that one.
Okay, any questions or comments on this?
She was hired for that resignation that we had. Amy, is that going to be something, is she going to be hired next year also?
Right now, this is year. We're kind of in a unique situation right now, though, because she wasn't in the classroom for very long. We were going to talk that through, and so we need to have conversations about what that will look like. Lena's been a very supportive, readily available sub for our district for a lot of years, and math is really her area of expertise. So we're happy to provide her this opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. She's been subbing in the district, I don't know, 18, 20 years. So I think it's great that something opened up for her.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on this.
Okay, Newfeld.
Yes.
Pyatt.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
Balzer.
Yes.
Boldig.
Yes.
Deep.
Yes.
Long. Long.
Yes. Hello?
Mead.
I said yes.
Hi, Jeannie. Thank you. Mead.
Yes.
And Mary.
Yes. And that will take us up to donations.
I move the board approve the following donations. Serenity for providing free internet access via public Wi-Fi at locations throughout the district. The Antigo Public Library for providing books for students to keep. And Mr. Dave Kerr, career and tech ed teacher at the high school, for an added public Wi-Fi hotspot in the parking lot of Kerr's Country Store in Phlox.
I'll second that.
Okay, and a thank you to all these people for doing these things for our community and our district. Any other questions or comments on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. And then we'll just confirm the next meeting is May 12th, 6 p.m., hopefully in the Antigo Middle School IMC.
Yes, let's hope so.
Okay, you guys don't hang up yet. What are we doing for, what number are we supposed to dial for this closed session? How do we
That's
get
in the
into
other invite.
And the phone number is?
Can tell you now.
So we would ask everyone participating in closed session to hang up, disconnect with this Google chat and then call the phone number.
Okay.
Okay, but we're going to make a motion here to go into session, correct?
Okay.
Would that be correct, Julie? Was that what you were intending? We make the motion to go into closed session here or make it in the other phone call?
you can make it here because that typically happens before you go into the meeting.
Okay.
In that case,
So-
Andy, I'll move that we have a consideration of a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to section 19.85 subsection F, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business, whatever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session.
Second.
Yeah, we'll do a roll call on that, Mary Kay.
Okay. Hyatt,
No.
Schrader, Schrader, JD, did you leave? Yes, JD left the meeting.
Yeah, looks like.
Okay. Balzer,
Yes.
Bolding,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Long,
No.
Mead,
No.
Newfeld,
Right, I'm really confused. Are we voting? Are we going to go into closed session, right?
Yes,
Correct.
It's to correct. It's to go into closed.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yes.
And Mary,
Yes. And so what was the tally on that vote there, Mary Kay?
5-3. 5-3.
it's 5-3, and we have an no vote from JD.
Okay. Okay. So we will reconvene here.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes. Yes.
Why wouldn't we be going into closed session? This is the first time this
We
is.
can discuss it in closed session.
Mary,
we'll
my
talk about it.
experience on the board, I was always taught you never go into closed session over the phone.
Oh, all right.
And so I hate to be a pickle puss Polly tonight, but
No,
I
you're not.
can't go with that.
I can't see
I'm
if you're
getting a
being pushed.
lot of feedback, but I can address that. So you're right. Traditionally, it's not a good idea to go into closed session virtually. However, the pandemic has put us, as you know, in a different situation. So first, Mary Kay and I checked our own policies, and in our bylaws, it does indicate that we can vote over the telephone, which is what we expect will happen tonight in closed session. And then not only did I check with Dean Dietrich, and I have his answer in writing that it is permissible, I also have an opinion from Boardman Clark. I know, Danny, you had shared from WASB too, and everyone is exercising caution, and I think that's really smart. So what we'll do in closed session is when Andy takes, or Mary Kay takes roll call, we'll ask you to, each of you who attends, to indicate that you are in a secure area on your telephone where no one else can hear you. That's one precaution that Boardman Clark suggests we take. So very unusual times, no doubt. But we just wanted to make sure we did our homework to make this permissible, but respect the decision of those of you who won't participate.
Thank you.
And just so we know, are you intending not to participate?
Oh, Andy, did you get enough people? I signed out too early. I'm sorry about that. Did you need my vote? Julie said go, so
We are already voted on that, but we're going to go into closed session here in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so then we we just hang up on this session and dial up the number that was in the reference to us and then go from there.
Yes, on your Google Calendar, you will have access to that phone number, and so no one will be on video.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, Jeannie.
Hey,
Bye, Jeannie.
hey, Julie, if I'm not there, I'm trying to figure it out.
Okay, just
Okay?
call me.
Okay, just call me. All right.
Yep.
You sound like a robot. Sorry.
Walter, is that you?
No, it's Tim again.
Yeah, Tim.
Tim, I don't know how you do it, but this voice changing module you have is something else.
Okay, we are all set with streaming, and now I'm going to invite Mike Winter on the open session link.
Okay, we'll wait for him to get there.
Julia, I'm sorry. The stream actually, I won't be able to stream it to that same link. I would have to create a new stream, which I can do, but I think it'll just be easier if I've got the recording going, and I'll just add it to the recording that I already have, and then I'll just re-upload the whole meeting with everything spliced together.
You know what you're doing. That's what we'll do then. Thank you. So you're recording right now.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
And Mike Winter is not going to join us. He said there's no reason for him to be here, so.
Okay, then as a result of closed action, the board moved to